preservation of and increased access to the 92nd Street Y Humanities Audio Archives is generously funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Good evening and welcome to the opening of this spectacular series, Sundays with Wendy Wasserstein. My name is Susan Engel and I direct the Adult Division in the Center for Adult Life and Learning. So glad to see so many of you here with us on this cold winter day. Just to remind you, we only have a few tickets available for the remaining evenings in this series, which spotlights some of America's most creative people. On February 5th, Barry Diller will be joining Wendy, and Forrest Sawyer will also be joining her as co-moderator for that evening. On February 12th, Robert Klein will appear, and on March 5th, Nicholas Heitner, Andre Bishop, and Forrest Sawyer will join Wendy as well. And now for tonight. As many of you know, there has been a last-minute change of program. Due to a production scheduling conflict, Nathan Lane has had to fly to Los Angeles. He is very sorry he cannot be with us this evening and promises to reschedule at a future date, and we will write you a note and let you know as soon as we have confirmed that date. Meanwhile, we have a terrific program planned with Wendy interviewing Terrence McNally, whose hit play, Love, Valour, Compassion, opens at the Walter Kerr Theater on Broadway in just a couple of weeks. He is a prolific playwright and, as many of you know, is the author of such memorable plays as A Perfect Ganesh, Lips Together, Teeth Apart, The Lisbon Traviata, Frankie and Johnny and the Clair de Lune, and he also wrote the book for the musical adaptation of Kiss of the Spider Woman, for which he won a 1993 Tony Award. Many of you might remember his opera for children performed on this stage called You and Who just a few months ago. In addition, joining this panel is one of the most talented young stars of the New York theater scene, Joe Mantello. Many of you know Mr. Mantello from his stellar performance as Louis in Tony Kushner's Angels in America. And he is also a distinguished director, having directed John Robin Bates's 3 Hotels, and tonight he'll be discussing his collaborative work with Terrence McNally as director of Love, Valour, Compassion. It's also my pleasure to welcome back for her 3rd season hosting this interview series, one of America's best-loved playwrights, whose Broadway hit, The Sisters Rosenzweig, captured the hearts and souls of New York theatergoers and is now on national tour, as well as being produced at the Old Vic in London. Her other plays include the Pulitzer Prize-winning The Heidi Chronicles, which is now being made into a movie, Uncommon Women and Others, and Isn't It Romantic? In addition to her extraordinary work as a playwright, she contributes a great deal of her time and talent to the philanthropic and cultural life of this city and stretches herself in new ways in venues such as this one, which allow for the relationship between her and her adoring audience to flourish. Her insight, wonderful sense of humor, and pure delight make an evening with Wendy Wasserstein always one to remember. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Wendy Wasserstein, Terrence McNally, and Joe Mantello.
Hi, Terrence. And Nathan, it's so nice to see you.
Lost some weight, Nathan.
No, actually, I thought what we would talk about is the wonderful collaboration between Terrence and Joe and how this happened and how love, valor, and compassion came into being, and sort of bridge off from there into our feelings about the theater and ourselves and life and art and from there. But anyway, Joe, so tell me, Joe, how did this, well, just in very basic terms, how did this play come to you, or what was?
Well, do you want to start with, I can tell you how it came to me, or we can start how the play came into being, and because Speak up, is that what you said?
This is the transformation from actor to director.
As if it's not intimidating enough to come out and see Einstein, Shakespeare.
Steven Spielberg.
So you want to start at the beginning, or we can pick it up midstream, or,
Well, I wrote it. And it was looking for a director, and I had seen Joe's work at Circle Rep and admired it enormously. First of all, at a play called Imagining Brad. No,
Yeah.
it got the title right. Yeah. And I thought it was a wonderful play that the critics didn't like. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a wonderful writer and a wonderful director. So that's the kind of thing you put, in the file in the back of your mind, because I've been working with Joe Tillinger a lot, and Joe wasn't available to do this play, and I remember Joe, and then he'd also done a wonderful job with 3 Hotels, and he'd done Nikki Silver's play at Naked Angel, so I'd seen 3 plays of his, so it was not very courageous of me to have the script sent to him, because I'd admired his work enormously, and he can talk about when he read it. What was nice is, since I hadn't worked with a new director in many, many years, I was kind of nervous. How do you know if a director is right for you? Because basically, if someone says, I like your play, you say, good, you can direct it.
Right.
You can be in it. You can do whatever you want with it. You like it. I was trying to be intelligent, and I said to him, how would you direct the first moment of the play? And he had such a wonderful image, I don't know if any of you have seen the play, but there's thank you. The wonderful model of the house is totally Joe's invention. All I had written was bare stage, which of course means absolutely nothing. It means you don't want a realistic set. And I had the men singing Beautiful Dreamer. The rest was Joe's idea, and right away he said, I think the audience has to know where we are. Clearly you don't want a realistic set. I think there should be a doll's house there. The minute he said that, I thought, this guy understands that this play is meant to be playful. It's not about turntables, getting beds and elevators, and he just got it. So I let him go on a little longer, but he had the job in about 20 seconds.
When you write your plays, do you think about how they look? I actually don't, so I'm sort of curious about that.
This one, I thought more about how I didn't want it to look. I knew I did not want a realistic set. And a bare stage, I think what I wrote was a bare stage, Rubik's Cube, primary red, yellow, green, just something that would say to people, I don't want realism or an attempt to have all the venues that the place goes to. And Joe knows this. We sent it to about 5 directors, because I hadn't worked with any of them, and maybe one of them, all 5 of them would not have wanted to direct it. Joe was the only one who found the play playful. He said, this will be so much fun to direct. A lot of directors said, this is really going to be hard. It takes place, flashes forward and backwards in time. You have all these settings. It's going to be very complicated working out the set. I always thought it would be playful. To me, the play is about 7 men telling you a story. And Joe got that, just from reading it.
So then, tell a little bit about the process of it. So you read the play, and then did you arrange for some sort of reading, or was that?
No, I remember getting a call about the play. They said, you have to make a decision really soon. And the play, when it arrived, it was like that thick. And they said, and we have to know by tomorrow. So I read it really quickly, and I loved it. And I actually, when I finished reading it, I thought, and this literally never happens, I thought, I'm the person to direct this play. And
Really?
I don't know why, but I did. And
You told me that. You said, I know how to direct this play.
I never
I'll do a
say
great
that.
job
I really
on it.
don't.
I know.
I usually just say thank you. It's wonderful, and you're going to find someone who's going to do a terrific job on this. And
Are you ever tempted by plays that you think you should direct even though you don't like them so much? Does that ever happen? I mean,
yes, that happened recently.
Did?
And I loved the play when I read it, but I had that feeling. I thought, this is not really for me. I'm as a wonderful writer, and but something about it, I really, it feels like someone could. I know someone who would be able to do it better, and anyway, so that's another story. But so I went to meet Terrence, thinking all along that. There was no way in hell that I would be hired to direct this play. And strangely enough, sitting on his balcony drinking caffeine-free Diet Coke, we sort of just had a conversation about the play, and it seemed right. And as you know, finding a director for a play is very hard. It's sort of like going on a blind date,
It's
and then
really
the next day
hard.
you're married.
Right,
And-
right. And you don't find out it was a bad marriage till the end.
Till the end, right.
It's really bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even to a nice person.
Yeah.
Well,
And so it is a leap of faith, and
But I'd never, I guess, had a director say to me, I'd love to direct this play. It'll be so much fun, and I'll do a great job.
Right.
It made me very comfortable to hear that. I was very trusting, and I believed him. I hasten to add, though, as I said, I've seen 3 productions of Joe that I thought were so wonderful, and he really captured the world of 3 very different writers, I thought, in each play. They were quite different. But it is a great adventure and a leap of faith to go with a new director, and I think there's a reason playwrights and directors get joined at the hip for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. Because when you find out it's not a good marriage, it's way too late. You'll have like 5 kids by then or something. You know?
Right. Or sometimes it's time to change marriages too. So. But tell us a little bit about the process of it. So you get this play, you say it's wonderful, I can do this, and then what happens?
Well, with this particular play, the first thing, it was really about problem solving for the first few, because as those of you who've seen the play know that, it leaps all over the place, forward and backward in time, and from a lake to a house. And so it became about finding a way to establish the rules of the play. When I first came to New York and with my friend Peter Hedges, who wrote a novel and later the screenplay for a book called What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he, it's a good book. And we had a company together with a bunch of people from our school, North Carolina School of the Arts, and it was like Mary Louise Parker and K. Todd Freeman and several other people. And so we came up here and no one was interested in hiring us. And so we used to kind of do temp work during the day, and at night we'd get together and Peter would write these plays for the company. And all we could really afford was to have like a sort of a black space like this and 2 chairs and a table. So for many years, that's how we worked, and so now whenever I read a play, that's how I imagine the play. Even though it could be an enormous budget, I imagine 2 chairs and a table. And so...
Which is pretty much what we have now.
Exactly.
But we have a mound, too.
And, because I have great faith in the audience, and I believe that if you establish the rules of the play, if you say, this is, they're standing around a little dollhouse, and they say, this is where we are, and then he walks over here and says, and this is my couch, and this is my sled, and the couch and the sled aren't there, you've said, here's where we are, and anything can happen. And I believe that the audience will go with it, and in the 3rd act, there's a scene where one of the characters takes another character and says to him, "Put your hand down the drain of the garbage disposal." And the designer said to me, "Well, we have to have a sink unit that comes on in the third act." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, because that's the only way that moment will work, and if not, maybe Terrence can change it to, him beating his legs with a hammer or something like that." And I said, no, we'll figure it out. And every night when they get to that moment out, there's nothing there. The actor just says, there's like a little sound cue, and then the actor says, "Put your head in there." And 50 people a night go,
You're right. I was one of them.
So I believe that the words are enough. I believe the audience will make the leap with you, if it's set up right. So I just worked my way through it that way.
Maybe just because I'm a playwright too, that I'm sort of curious about when you get a script that's a hefty size, and the process of changing it. Did you ask Terrence to rewrite before you went into production, or did this happen during production?
As I remember, we cut a little bit before we went into production, and then we just kept cutting all along, literally every day. And then there was a point where the play was about 3 hours with intermission, and we kept cutting, and it stayed 3 hours with intermissions. It refused to sort of be any shorter than that. I don't know. It's just...
We did some restructuring too before we went into rehearsal, and then some in rehearsal, and there was definitely some rewriting in rehearsal. An enormous difference that this play had from any of my others is AT&T paid for the production, or made a sizable contribution to Manhattan Theater Club. And Joe, in his wisdom, said, with this excess money, I don't think the physical production really will be that expensive. Could we have a fourth week of rehearsal? And most plays in New York are rehearsed for 3 weeks, and your fourth week is spent in the theater doing technical rehearsal before the first preview. We had 4 weeks in the rehearsal hall, and the most significant changes in the play all happened in the fourth week, because it takes almost 3 weeks for the actors to sort of get a sense of the shape and the rhythm of the play. And then you sort of figure out as playwright what it needs, and you go home and do your rewrites, but the actors are off usually in that fourth week doing technical rehearsals, and the last person they want to see is you with your new pages. I'm sure you've been there too. So to have this fourth week was the greatest luxury, and I would say to any producer now, try to find a way to pay for that fourth week of rehearsal, because you have to pay the actors performance salary. Equity will only allow them to rehearse for 3 weeks at rehearsal rates. So that fourth week we had to pay full salary. But I think in terms of investment, it's, very, very sensible to do that. And I hope you get it sometime this extra week. It is amazing what we got to do. And no one was mad at anybody. And most plays, everyone gets a little crazy that fourth week, because you're trying to make changes, and they're also trying to set lights and fit costumes and move scenery. And here we were able to make those changes without any of that. And it was just bliss, really bliss.
Are you going to be making many changes in the play as it moves from Manhattan Theater Club to Broadway? Or?
No. We're trying to find a few little cuts, just simply because if the audience really likes the play, it ends like 5 after 11, meaning they really laugh and really clap and things. And on Broadway, if you go Unions. 1 second over 11, it gets very expensive. So while the actors are off on their vacation, Joe and I have been trying to come up with some cuts. It's not fun or easy, but since it's not a 4-hour play, it was Angels in America. There's no way that was going to end at 11. It's the next hour, so they don't care if it ends at 11:01 or 11:59. You've got to pay quite a bit of extra money, which is going to affect the running costs of the play. And Manhattan Theater Club is a not-for-profit institution, so they're very much going on the line for us by moving this play to Broadway, and we'd like them to get their money back. So we are trying to be very cooperative, but it's hard, especially when it's been running for 3 months, and we feel we've done really the cutting we want. So
it's interesting to me, because you're someone who has so much an association with a not-for-profit theater and has done so many plays there, and that the play transferring to Broadway, I wonder if one of the hopes for Broadway is somehow involving the not-for-profit theater in Broadway somehow. Do you think that?
Yes, because I think the most energetic producers in Manhattan now all are the artistic directors of our leading not-for-profit theaters. We're also doing this play, you know, Wendy, on the Broadway Alliance, which is a scheme in which hopefully running costs can be kept down, and ticket prices, I wish they could go to $25. They're going to be $40, which is the off-Broadway price, but it's still less. It's $10 to $15 less than it would have been otherwise. But I really I know it had enormous play in the press. The interview Neil Simon gave saying Broadway is no longer a sensible place to do a play, and I'd like to be part of trying to prove that wrong. And let's see. I mean, we hear ticket sales are very good, but it's, you know, it's 1,000 seats to fill a night as opposed to 300. But it would be wonderful to see these theaters lit up again with plays, because if that doesn't happen, we're going to lose more, and more will be torn down. So I hope this Broadway Alliance works. Thank you.
I'm curious, Joe, also your the decision to sort of go from being an actor to becoming a director, and how you made that decision, and are you still planning to go back and forth, or?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I was so lucky to have the opportunity to do Angels in America. It was an amazing role that and so everything that I read now just pales in comparison, and also it's just, I mean, I don't want to be whiny, but it's like eight performances a week is grueling, and it's much easier. I mean, when you are the director, I have discovered that when the play is not going well, or when the audience is misbehaving, you get to leave.
Right. Right.
To go out the back door.
Right.
And that is a great, great, great thing. So now that I've experienced that, I don't know. It's when I was a little bit younger, it was easier to kind of get it up for 8 a week, and I don't know.
No. When it's interesting about Angels in America, too, because what Terrence was talking about, reviving the Broadway theater, because I thought what was interesting about that play, which was running the same time as The Sisters, was I thought these are different voices than someone would ordinarily say, oh, those Broadway playwrights, Tony Kushner. Yeah. But in a way, do you think that the trick to the survival of the theater is bringing more writers like Tony or Terrence or, you know, Chris Durang or myself or whatever to the Broadway theater, or keeping them off Broadway, or is this not even an argument to be had?
I don't know. I mean, the thing that was encouraging about Angels in America to be, because I remember the year before, Ian McKellen on the Tony Award saying, you know, I've just come back from London where the most exciting play is by an American, Tony Kushner, and it's going to win all the Tonys next year. And I thought, Sir Ian, you're deluded. That play is not going to be on Broadway. So it was really, really encouraging to me that people turned out to see an intelligent, challenging, provocative play, that it wasn't condescending, that made you work, that made you, that was entertaining, but also thought-provoking. So the answer to your question, I guess, is yes, because all of the people that you mentioned are good writers, and I think it's about the writing, starting there. So I don't know. We seem to be in a time where the only kinds of plays that survive on Broadway are things that have, you know, helicopters dropping and the house is falling over, and I think there's a place for that. I don't understand it, but I think there's a place for it. But more and more it seems to be becoming the rule, you know, that it has to have something. I've not had one conversation with anyone about Inspector Calls that isn't almost entirely about the house falling over. I don't think there's anything wrong with the house falling over. I just think there's got to be more.
Well, it's been interesting to me this week, sort of watching the new Congress and thinking about the theater and the people, and thinking about Angels in America or Terrence's plays or whatever, and thinking about, does our theater really reflect the culture of what's going on now, or are they going in two divergent ways?
I don't know. I think that I want to believe, and I'm not an optimistic person, I want to believe that we are at a very fertile time, certainly for playwriting, and given what's just happened in Congress, I'm trying not to be discouraged about it. I think that it's a time where the arts will flourish because they have to. They have to. It's time to fight, and there's no time to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wendy, my feeling here is that why the Broadway Alliance is important, I think those theaters that are in danger of going under are the best real estate still in America, certainly New York City, in which to see our plays performed. Mm-hmm. I think there's no question in my mind that our play is going to look better on a proper stage. Manhattan Theater Club, we ask people to believe you're outdoors, and they say, look, and they practically burn their fingers on the land, right. With our 8-foot proscenium opening. Mm-hmm. It's going to be nice to so that's why the Neil Simon interview got me so annoyed, because it's like giving up. Yes, the Broadway theater will be helicopters only if we let it be, but we who work in the theater have to find a way to reclaim that space, and I do think the price of tickets is outrageous, and I think that is a big, big issue. And I think people have to start regaining confidence that the plays are going to address the issues that we're talking about, that are interesting about society, and for them just to be seen off-Broadway, it sort of says theater is elitist, and it is really for a chosen few, and I'd like us to reject that notion. Mm-hmm. And I think Angels in America being on Broadway was an incredible event, just it being there, and I think the fact that, someone said to me, did I want to be on a panel about the golden age of gay theater? I said, I think it's a golden age of American theater right now. It's Broadway that is ailing. I think there are more playwrights now writing really good plays than there were in the 40s and 50s. Which they now say was the golden age of, maybe it was the golden age of Broadway, but I think now we're in the golden age of American theater. You can see good theater in other cities. There are playwrights living in other cities, and I think that's wonderful.
I was at Columbia. A friend of mine is teaching freshman English at Columbia and asked me to go up to his class. And it was Stephen Graham, and I went up to his class, and we asked the students there. They had come down to see Uncommon Women. And for a number of them, it was the first play they had ever seen. And we asked them who their favorite playwright was. And this was kids from St. Louis and Seattle. And one of them said Neil Simon, and I like the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber. And the rest of them talked about movies. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, when Terrence McNally went to school here, he used to go downtown and see plays. Yeah. And it was very sad to me, because it was as if the plays weren't,
in their
mm-hmm.
in their consciousness, yeah. Well, I think again, theater prices would help there. Mm-hmm. I think if we all took a young person to see a good play, would make an enormous difference. Someone like 7 or 8 years old, take them to a Chekhov play, a Tennessee Williams play, let them see some good theater instead of Puss in Boots,
What was the first play you saw, Terrence?
Annie, Get Your Gun.
And where did you see it?
In New York. Where else? Yeah. Of course, a friend of mine had his niece up here. I said, how old is she? She said 9. And I was thinking of taking her to Spider Woman. I said, oh, no, that's very unsuitable for a child. I said, take her to Phantom of the Opera.
I'm afraid to make you tell this, but I'm going to about your first play about the Gershwins.
I grew up in a culturally deprived part of Texas, and I wrote a musical in high school based on the back of record album, the liner notes, in which I had the talented young composer George Gershwin be thrown out of a song agency where he's trying to sell his wares, and the secretary rushed out and said, don't be discouraged. She said, I think your music is wonderful, and I'm a lyricist. And he said, what's your name? And she said, Ira. And they fell in love and got married and became the Gershwins. And no one knew the difference. I got an A on it.
It's so funny.
I thought when Charles Ludlam, when it was his field, in its height, I should have sent him that script. Would have made us both a lot of money, I think. True theater of the ridiculous.
Do you think, Joe, being an actor, even when not 8 times a week, contributes to being a director? Are there specific things that, in terms of dealing with actors, or?
Well, I like to believe that I'm sensitive to the actor's process. That I know what it's like to go from the read through previews, through opening night, and a lot of it is just sheer terror. So having been through it, I think I try to be patient. Yeah.
Wendy, I want to ask you a question. Do you understand the actor's process?
No.
I don't either. But you know a good actor when you see one.
I do know a good one. When I see it, no. I always let the director do. I think it's a complete mystery to me, and if I get in there, I'll muck it up.
That's exactly how I feel.
I think it's always, no, you just get really good people.
Well, I used to wonder how Tennessee Williams could have told 15 actresses, "You were the greatest Blanche Dubois." Now I find myself saying, "Oh, you're the best, the best production I've ever seen," because otherwise I think I'll say the wrong thing. But I don't. I've watched so many good actors work. I was at rehearsal almost every day for this play, and it has 7 extraordinary actors. But I can't say I understand their process, how they get so wonderful. And I watch, and Joe is also you're a whisperer. Nathan, and they go over in the corner, and then Nathan comes back, and it's different. But even if you'd spoken up, I still wouldn't have understood it, and it's a little scary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very scary.
But because bad actors really drag us down with them, as you know.
What's always interested me about Terrence, too, is Terrence is amazingly prolific. And whenever I talk to Terrence, he says, "I haven't done any work, I haven't written, and there's a new play." And so do you think of yourself as prolific?
No.
See?
No, yeah. I think people would think of you as prolific, too, and you know.
One every 4 years, you see, as prolific. I don't think so.
See, my idea of prolific would be 1 every 4 weeks. Then you're prolific, But
has your writing process changed over the years, do you think?
I think it's harder to write. I think I'm better, though. I think I've sort of learned, and I'm not so rigid. If somebody was talking about doing a play with a young writer today, a producer, and said he won't change everything. He wants everything said exactly the way he thinks it should be said, and the set and the blocking. He's got opinions on everything. And I really left the directing of this play to Joe, and the acting to Nathan and Stephen, and I worry about the writing. And I wasn't that way when I started. I know how every line should be said, how everything should look, and I think I'm much more of a collaborator than when I began.
I think you're also going through an interesting, period in your playwriting, because not only are you sort of at the top of your form, but you're also veering off into uncharted territory, I think, for you. I always think of Love, Valour as being kind of the child of Lips Together and Perfect Ganesh.
Mm-hmm.
You had to kind of go through those 2 plays to get to Love, Valour, not...
But I owe that all to Lynn Meadow and Manhattan Theater Club, because they deserve it. They say to a writer, "We are committed to your body of work, not your play that we think might be a hit." I think it's the same kind of commitment Wendy has from Andre, and you've just gone with him from Andre Bishop from Playwrights Horizon to Lincoln Center. And I think people like Wendy and myself, writers, are so privileged to have a producer behind you, because a lot of playwrights are reduced to sort of auditioning, Right. Well, maybe this will make you some money, and I think he's looking for that sort of play, or she wants that sort of vehicle. And Lynn has given me such unconditional love. I'm sort of kind of overwhelmed by it, and it's permission to veer off, as you say. And there's no question that Perfect Ganesh, was not as successful as Lips Together, Teeth Apart, the play which had preceded it. Another producer would have said, we'll cool it on the next play, let's do some readings, some workshops. Lynn doesn't do that. She she's committed to me as a person who's going to write some hits and some big flops too. And I don't have to compete with myself, and I just owe her my life, really. And that theater, I mean, Lynn's the artistic director, but the commitment they've made to me is extraordinary, and I am so grateful to them, and I feel such a responsibility to keep growing or trying to do my best.
So do you feel that it allows you to take more chances?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really lucky to have this, and I think you must feel this with Andre, and don't you feel? We have a lot of playwright friends who do not have such a commitment from a producer.
Yeah, I think it's the commitment. It's also showing your work to someone you trust and knows how you work, so that if I give Andre a long play, he knows, oh, Wendy cuts her plays during rehearsal, or, it's a long process, but it's somebody who can vaguely get an idea of what it will be like in the end, and also someone who's someone you really trust. So it's both the encouragement, but the sort of the trust of their criticism as well, I think.
I was just reading a liner note on a record the other day about someone it was a conductor, and he had the last interview with Sibelius before he died, and Sibelius was saying, the score, he says, I can't put down on paper what I really mean by the music. It's such a pathetic attempt at what I hear in my head. And I think our plays, I shouldn't speak for you, but my play is like, it's not all I mean. And I gave it to Joe and the actors to hear the music in it. And it's such a collaboration. And when you have the right one, it is so wonderful. And the play got better because we had the right actors and the right director and the right designer to do this play. If we hadn't, God knows where I would have ended up with it. But I do think the script my script sometimes seems a feeble attempt at put down a lot that's going on up here, and I see, and you said, do I see my plays? In a way I do, or I mean, it's not a two-dimensional process to me, writing a play. It's just words on a script. It is something that I want to have sound and fury and color and light and movement, and it's so exciting to be in the rehearsal room when all this comes together. You know what it's like. It's the best. It's why you and I still live here and haven't gone to California.
Oh, that and other reasons, too. Driving is one of them. It's interesting, Joe, that you've worked both with Tony Kushner and Terrence, who are two great writers, I think, from very, and also writing on gay themes and of different ages and in different times. How do you see the change from, I think, or whatever I'm trying to get at, but...
I don't know that I see a change. Very different. I mean, I understand how they are different as people and how they are different, how their process is different. I mean, Terrence is very present in the rehearsal room and takes a lot from the actors and can, we sort of are creating and making it up as we're going along, whereas Tony tends to go away and come back at key points in the process and check in. And he sort of thought it out beforehand and wants to see if we're kind of keeping on track. I mean, that's the way their processes are different.
But it's interesting, do you think that the earlier plays of Terrence in some effect influenced Tony, and then Tony's plays sort of influenced this play of Terrence's as things go in that way?
Yes, I think it's all fluid like that. I want to think it's all, I mean, it's interesting, I read a play recently called The Waiting Room, which is not here yet.
Yes.
Did you know it?
I know that play. Yeah, it's a wonderful play.
Isn't it?
It's
but
an
I think
excellent
it's sort of, to me, that was the first time where I really thought this is a post-Angels in America play. And some of the stuff that Tony was experimenting with there, she's sort of taken it to the next step.
And a post-Carol Churchill play, too.
Churchill,
A wonderful
yeah.
play. We gave that play an award. Anyway.
I just wanted to say one thing. I went to the Metropolitan today, that Impressionism show. And there's a wonderful painting at the end of like 8 Impressionists in someone's studio. One is teaching the other, one's playing the piano all together. And I think of the New York Theater, I think the playwrights, we do cross-fertilize one another enormously. And I mean, I thought Angels in America sort of raised the stakes for a play on Broadway all over again. It was thrilling as an event, and it has to challenge you and inspire you somehow, or make you, you know.
But it's amazing that you were in this play in the Walter Kerr, and now you're directing a play there.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's great.
And Walter Kerr never gave me even a nice review. And they said he's coming opening night. He's going to come out of retirement to attack me one more time.
Terrence, you get our first question from the audience, which was, do you think critics help or hurt the theater world? This is for 20 points.
I was going to say, we've talked for almost an hour and we never once mentioned critics.
Wasn't that good?
Let's keep it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
When
the Times will go out and get a new one.
Oh, God. All right. When I first saw Love, Valor, Compassion at the Manhattan Theater Club, the gasp occurred at the first kiss and the frontal male nudity. The homophobes in the audience were uneasy. Will this get better or worse on Broadway? How will it attract I don't know. How will it affect the audience? How will it affect the evening?
To be honest with you, I never heard that gasp, but I probably wasn't listening for it. I think the nudity and is all very innocent in the play, and it becomes dangerous because of what you bring to it as an audience member. But the nudity itself is sort of dear.
Like Joe, I really was not aware of that, and Lynn was a little concerned because she said our subscribers are they might not be ready for this, and it wasn't a problem. Though there was that night about our fourth preview, a couple in their early 30s got up and within 30 seconds, and I rushed out to the lobby and I said, "What's the problem?" And they said, "This isn't the sort of play we care to see." And they smiled, and didn't they want their money back? They said it very nicely and politely.
Did you tell them you were the playwright?
Yes. I said, "Oh, it isn't anything I did then." They said, "This isn't the sort of play we want to see."
Did you give them their money back?
No.
See, All right. Terrence, how has your great love for opera influenced your playwriting?
That's why I overwrite. And my plays have arias and duets and trios, and I think I tend to write sort of big emotions, and I'm sure that's because of my love for opera and musical structure. I remember when I was in college, I had to take a course in music appreciation. We study the sonata form a lot, and I think that's really helpful for playwriting. That first movement of a sonata is very much like a play with themes, development, recapitulation, coming back to it, and I think my writing is very musical, and I'm glad. I mean, something. I didn't make this up, you know. So I'm so glad to have had.
Well, you listen to music a lot when you write, don't you?
Yeah. Well, that's more to set a mood, you know. When I wrote this play, I played Tchaikovsky piano music, which I didn't really know that repertoire very much, but he wrote about 8 CDs worth of piano music. Most of it's not very famous. A lot of it was, you know, for at-home playing, and I don't think there's any Tchaikovsky. Yeah, it was Swan Lake, yeah. But I mean that was just set a mood.
The difference is that when I was working on the play, I was listening to Sister Sledge.
I know.
Well,
that's why you called me Mr. McNally for 2 weeks too.
Joe, here's a question for you.
All right, yeah.
What do you, and this is for 40 points, what do you believe is the cause of the horrifically long life of cats?
Well, not me, because I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it said, was the horrifically long life of cats versus the all-too-short Broadway life of the brilliant angels in America. Wait, if he hasn't seen Cats.
I have not seen Cats, so I don't know.
Okay.
You have to speak English to understand Angels in America. Foreign tourists were not exactly rushing to see it, whereas Cats, you can sort of get.
Okay, this is a question for both of our guests. When did you start, or what started you writing plays? And then we get the same question for directing.
Well, after my triumph with George and Ira Gershwin, at Columbia I wrote The Varsity Show, which
With Ed Kleban.
With Ed Kleban, and Michael Kahn directed it, yeah. And I think I probably wanted to be a playwright long before I admitted it to myself. And when I think back now, and I'm really being honest, it's a lot easier to say you're a novelist or something, or a journalist. I hid behind being a journalist for quite a few years. And then I started writing plays, because as soon as I got to New York, I loved going to the theater. Ethel had traumatized me at age 6.
Yeah.
As soon as I got up here, like the first night I was in New York, I remember I didn't even unpack. I got in the subway and went down and saw Gwen Verdon and Damn Yankees. I'll never forget it, yeah. And then the second day I saw 2 shows. I don't know how I graduated Columbia, but but I saw a lot of good actors and plays, and I think I really wanted to. And but it's such a overweening, prideful thing to say, I'm going to be a playwright. So I think a lot of us sort of sneak into it, I'm a journalist who writes plays,
Right.
I would say, yeah.
And Joe, when did you start directing, or what was the first play you directed?
Well, like I said, this company that I was in with Peter Hedges, out of necessity, there was a writer and there were 8 or 10 actors, and so occasionally we would, one person in the group would kind of have to stand back to, become the director. So I would do that a little bit, and then I was in the lab at Circle Rep, and I'd had a sort of an awful acting experience or something, and I asked Peter if I could direct his play Imagining Brad, which we did in the lab, and Tanya Berezin saw it and decided to move it to the main stage, and said, very generously said that I was going with it. And I think I became a director because she told me that I was, and I believed her, and and she was very, like Terrence, I've been lucky enough to have, she's been very supportive and encouraging for many, many years.
She wanted to get us together
she
before
was
this
really?
play was written, and she said, "I've got a director," and I said, "I've seen his work and I love him." But she brought you to my house. I remember. So
Has she left Circle Rep now?
She will be leaving, I believe, in April.
And what is or should be the relationship between theater and film?
how many points is that for?
Well, that's 100.
That's
1,000.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we were talking a little. I don't really get film myself. I never go to movies. Why? Oh, it's so foreign to me. I think there's nothing like the theater to me, and as I was telling you before we came out here, I was approached to maybe direct a film, and I have no passion for it, and because I don't understand the rules of filmmaking. I know what it is to get in and go do a read through and kind of work through that, and I'm wrong. Maybe you've worked on films. You can,
but it's like it's happening behind glass. I mean, I see it. The words are familiar. I know I wrote it and I've created all these actors being there, but I don't feel that visceral connection that I did when we were sitting down on 16th Street rehearsing this play. And
I mean, I love rehearsal. When I've done film and TV as an actor, I freeze up because I love rehearsal. I love to just sort of get in there and be wrong and make a fool of myself. And generally when you're making a film or television, most of the time that you would be rehearsing is spent sitting, in your trailer or in a little room waiting for them to call you to shoot. And so I just get sort of nervous and
Yeah, we just did the Heidi Chronicles for film, and I spent most of the fall out there. And that was sort of interesting because I thought if I initially wrote this as a film, I'm so used to being in rehearsal with actors and Dan Sullivan, and it's not like working on a play. You'd have to have it all finished before it goes up.
Right.
And then, so that's a whole other thing. And then there are actors, and I don't know how the actors get to the performance.
I don't know either. I mean, because it's sort of, you have to walk onto the set with it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I think that there are people who are able to do it and are quite skilled at it, but it is a skill that is entirely different, at least in my experience, from the theater.
Or in fact, you don't rehearse it so that the camera can capture it,
Yes.
so it isn't worn out from them, which is really strange to me.
Yes.
The craft services were good.
Yes, that we need in the theater.
That was
But
very
still, the acting in a movie is finite. I mean, they can say, I know Frankie and Johnny, Al Pacino is not exactly a bullet in learning lines, and he likes,
Right.
take 27 is not unheard of on us. And people say, God, that's a lot, but still it's like only 27 times he did those lines. In our play at the end of 4 weeks rehearsal, the actors had rehearsed every line 270 times. And finally it's finite, and they take up these metal containers of films, and there goes Michelle Pfeiffer's performance. And she can never top herself, if you know what I mean. I thought she was great in it, but Nathan, like the last time I saw the play, just did new things that I'd never seen before that were better than he'd ever done them, and a movie actor doesn't get to do that, and that's what's so exciting about every time we go to the theater. It can be better. Sometimes it's not as good as the last time you saw it, but it's always different, and there's that possibility that a new inspiration can happen. In the film, finally, this scene is finished that day, print, take, and it's never done again, and that's
And it's out of your control. I mean, you can, as an actor, you may, in the theater, and you construct a performance that starts at A and goes to Z, hopefully. But in film, the director, or the editor, can pull out, B, D, and L and M, pieces that are integral to your performance, and you have no control over it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just a huge collaboration as opposed to a finite one.
I find movies sort of bewildering, and I don't know. They just it ends in one day. It seems they seem under rehearsed to me. I know what you mean about doing it fresh. So I think it's what stage actors bring with great technique. I don't think it gets repetitive. I think it gives them such a foundation that the inspiration can come afresh because there's such a solidity there. I mean, Nathan can only give a performance that is A+, but he also now has the luxury of being A triple+ some nights, or any of them.
Yeah.
Picking on Nathan because I know him so well, and Nathan's is almost as much a part of my life now artistically as Lynn Meadow is. I mean, this is like our 5th project together, and he just hears me the way Joe. When people have asked me what was it like working with Joe, we really didn't discuss things a lot. If you're always saying to the director or an actor what a line means or what the play means, you've got the wrong actor and the wrong director. We basically talked about what restaurant to go to that night.
But you're someone, Terrence, who's always sort of worked with a company of actors or people from Jimmy Coco to Nathan. It's always been...
I just love writing for actors. I mean, they're great. I couldn't do it. I mean, I tried acting once at Actors Studio, and my knees were shaking so badly. It was like a joke. I didn't think knees knocked. Mine did. And I had twitches in my face, and I threw up before we did this little play. And never again. And my awe for people can get up there and strip, literally, emotionally, every night, and literally, is, and I think that part be easier than the other stuff, is boundless how they can do it. And I just love the collaboration you get with actors and the director and the designer. I think Louis Ironson did such a wonderful set for us, and it just was. But we found the right people, and Joe was kind of the magnet that drew. Because most of the actors in this play, Nathan's the only one I'd ever worked with. No, I'd worked with John Glover, but there's some young guys in this play. They're just out of school, and they're great. And Joe was so patient at the rehearsal, the auditioning process. I kept thinking, it's 2 weeks before we go into rehearsal. This guy's good enough, and Joe would say, "No, we can do better. We've got to do better." And we really cast this play about 2 days before we finished it, before we went into rehearsal. Your patience was something that I learned a lot from, and hold out for the ideal actor. Don't. Oh, he'll do. I get impatient, and a good director has to be extremely patient and answer all sorts of questions. The author can leave. The director can leave once the play's open. He can't leave rehearsal. The author can leave rehearsal even. We can really vanish.
Well, Terrence, this is someone I saw Love, Valour and enjoyed it very much. How did the playwright and director decide when the play should end? Recently, I found several plays finished a bit too long.
Does that mean one of them? Are we one of them? They liked Love, Valour, but they didn't like Compassion, I guess. I don't know. We had trouble with the ending, I always do, and I think we found the right one. I don't think it's too long now. And we moved we couldn't figure it out, and then Joe said, let's move these 3 lines here, and we cut. I don't think we made a cut so much as we moved 3 lines from page 71 to page 70, and it made it seem the right ending. And
you listen to the audience also. I mean, there was a point where, not that the play was too long, but that it wasn't paying off in the right way, that we would come to the ending, which was always the ending, and it wasn't adding up. And if you keep listening to it night after night and listen to the audience, they will tell you, I think, not that it's theater by committee, but they will tell you where they're getting it, what's exciting them, and they will also tell you when it's too much.
Yes, which we found with the third act, the ending, but you were the one who had the idea about that simple moving those lines from one page to a page earlier, which made an enormous difference in it seeming to not stop. And I don't know if I would have come up with that. I'm not good at things like that. Just not. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I ever will be. So that's why I need a director I trust to do that. I mean, me cutting is like, yesterday I was going to clean my closets out, and I got a pile of clothes. Then I said, no, I better put that back. And, that's how I'm with cuts. It takes me an hour to cut one line, and they say, no, I can't cut it. So I say, Joe, cut it. And I trust,
Well, it's interesting because when we first started working together, here I am, I'm working with Terrence McNally. And but the play was long, and so at first I was very hesitant, and it was like it was literally almost like Mr. McNally. Every word is a gem, but maybe if you could possibly see your way to just this much going, and then by the end it was like Terrence. That just sort of develops. I mean, once I think Terrence started to trust me, and I spent more time with the play, I started to understand it more.
But the actors are very helpful on cuts too. A good actor always is willing to make cuts in a scene of theirs, and it's not about how long they're on stage. They know, because they know they play
Jane
well.
Alexander telling me, Wendy, this doesn't feel good on my tongue. What?
Nathan just says, I won't say this, and throws the script down. He's not as polite.
Can you talk about the trend of gay plays and the implications on the openness of society? That's 200.
The trend of gay, I think there's so many good gay playwrights now. So there's no trend. I think some wonderful plays are being written by gay playwrights, and plays that address gay characters. There's no longer a tokenism, and what was the other part? The trend is,
the
look,
trend
there's some very
and
good
the
writers.
implications on the openness of society. Well,
I don't know. I think that living in a time of plague, where there's a plague and an epidemic, I think that it's things become much more immediate, and I think that there's a proliferation of gay play or gay-themed plays now, because so many of us are, experiencing what it is to lose people, to be sick, it makes it very immediate, and so it becomes a reaction to the world that we're living in right now.
I think so. I think it's closer to what you were saying earlier, too, that there is a proliferation just of good playwriting, because there's this urgency to speak as opposed to let things pass in a way. I think we're entering a really good period of playwriting,
I really,
too.
really do. It's very
Because
exciting.
one of the differences between plays and movies is that you can say things in a play that you can't possibly say in a movie because they have to go through 57 different meetings with 47 different vice presidents before you can say them. So I think, in the movie of Spider Woman, it seems that I can't even read this. The straight character slept with Molina out of affection, but in the musical, he sleeps with him only to get his message to his comrades. Would you talk about the difference?
I thought he slept with him to accomplish his political end in both versions and the novel. So I would disagree with that interpretation of the film. I think it's only later, at the very end of it, that I think he realizes what he's done and the extent of his feelings for Molina. But I would disagree with that interpretation of the movie.
Are you writing another musical, Terrence? Are you working
I may
on
be.
one?
I sort of don't want to talk about it until contracts are signed and everything. They are such a big undertaking, and you've been played around with doing one, that you think. And also, when you get older, you start being aware of how much time maybe you have left to write things. And do you want to spend 2 years, 3 years of your life writing a musical or a screenplay? Because it all seems to be by committee. And I think Wendy and I both know how to get our plays done. That's very important to me, and I think it is to you. I give it to Lynn, and it will get done. A movie, you give it to, as you said, one person, and then 500 people have opinions on it by the next morning, and it drags out, and you're on the 17th rewrite, and it still may not happen. And my time is getting more precious to me as I get older, and there are things I do want to write about. And the project, I'll say what it is. It's a musical of ragtime, which I can't think of anything more difficult to make a musical of, but more challenging, and I think it's such a wonderful book. You would be, if you're going to get involved with a project, Ragtime, I think, would be a wonderful one. But there are some contractual things to, Wendy and I are both on the Council of the Dramatists Guild, and we're not a union, and writers' rights are being assaulted all the time by producers, and we're in kind of a conflict now on Ragtime. It's a contract that I'm not willing to sign unless some accommodations are made, and these are all things that affect the state of the theater today, and it's very important, the solidarity Wendy and I are allowed to feel by our fellow writers who are all part of this guild, which is totally voluntary. But I know that in trying to get what I think is a fair contract, Wendy and Chris and Tony Kushner and Marcia Norman and every writer you can think of, we all support one another because we're not a union. Unlike Equity, we can't go on strike, but we can support one another. And it's very important as the theater is, especially the commercial theater, becomes a more fragile institution, that writers really stick together and fight for our fair rights, which is all based on commissions anyway, which seems right. If we, on royalties, if we write something that's any good and people are interested in, then we make some money. Unlike writing screenplays, you can be paid 7 figures for a movie that never gets produced. And we both have friends who've made a lot more money than Wendy and I have as writers, but they haven't had the satisfaction of seeing their work on the screen the way we've had the satisfaction of seeing our work on a stage like this performed by really great actors. And I think I'd rather go the way we're going, but thank God for the Dramatists Guild that I don't feel I'm totally alone in saying to a producer, no, that's not fair. That's my speech for the night.
I'm curious. I have one last question, Terrence. I think what Joe said about that your playwriting seems to be going off in you're taking it in a very interesting direction. Is there some way, can you talk about that at all, or where you're wanting to take your plays, or what you're trying to do? I would have a hard time talking about that.
It is hard to talk about it. As I said, part of it is knowing Lynn will produce the next play. It's not like, I better not write a play about 8 gay men. Lynn won't produce it. So that's one. There's that kind of freedom. I'm suddenly falling in love with, Joe mentioned the last 3 plays. In a sense, Lips Together, Teeth Apart took place on a bare sun deck, you know. That was like backstage when they went in the house. Then Ganesh was just those panels, and now we're down to a stage and a mound. And when I went to Brooklyn and saw Declan Donnellan's production of As You Like It, I said, and that's how I want my next play to be. A bunch of actors on a bare stage with maybe 2 props. I'm just getting the freedom that is giving me, instead of, enters downstage, sits on a sofa. And, my early plays had, so many music cues and answering machines and televisions, and I'm sort of getting away from all that, and that's kind of exciting. And
does that help you break the form,
yeah,
too?
Yeah, and suddenly all these theater devices, like narrative, talking to the audience, asides, are interesting me now. And I'm starting this new play I'm thinking about, I like the conventions of disguises, and it's sort of, I guess I'm playing with that with the British twins, John and James. It's clearly the same actor, but just the theatricality of it. And, again, Joe staged that scene exactly how I thought it'd be done, that he's talking to an empty chair. Other directors said, well, we'll have to get a really good dummy, to put there when he talks to it. And they just they didn't get what I meant. And the play is that theatrical. And that's the only way I ever saw the scene with the hand down the garbage disposal. And other directors had said, we've got to have a, real unit come in here. And that's a change in my writing, certainly. And I think I feel the responsibility of keeping theater, working that people like you and me keep writing our best plays, because as an institution, it's very, very important. I think it civilizes us. I think it teaches us about who we are. And I sound maybe a little idealistic, but I think I finally am about good theater, not cats. And I don't want to not cats, but that it's really what we do. All of us do who work in the theater is important. And we just have to work our best, and it's not about, having a glitzy show on anymore. And the stakes are very, very high. I think living in this society now and being an artist, and it's important. I take it very seriously, and I guess I did when I started. It was sort of fun. I get to write plays, and now it's a wonderful responsibility, and I'm sure you feel it, and I know Wendy does as a writer. And it's great. It's a great time to be a writer. It's a great time, I think, to work in the American theater. I'm sorry a lot of people are having trouble earning a living, but I don't think that's made the quality of work suffer. There's some extraordinary stuff being done in workshops and off-Broadway in this city. And we're really lucky to have this play move to Broadway. But we're not the only ones. We're not the only play in New York. Though that's the publicity now, the only play. There are a lot of good plays being done, and we've just got to find the audiences and get that enthusiasm back and lower ticket prices.
And on that note, I think we'll say good night, Nathan. Good night, Terrence.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more information on the 92nd Street Y, New York, and all of our programs, please visit us at 92ny.org.